A little over a year ago, I decided to make the leap and quit my job at a production company where I was receiving a nice steady paycheck every 2 weeks to pursue a career in freelance documentary editing. Over the past year, I went from having zero clients to basically being at a point where I've replaced the salary I was getting at the company I was working for. I've made a ton of mistakes, things that I wish I had known before making this leap, but today I want to talk about the 5 mistakes that stand out to me that I think if you avoid them will save you a lot of time, effort, and frustration. Which brings me to lesson number 1. When I first started freelancing, it felt like common knowledge that the thing you were supposed to do was to build up your personal brand, to build a nice Instagram page, to make your grid look all polished and sexy, and to start reaching out to as many people as possible. So every day I'd open up Instagram, I'd try and find 10 new people to send DMs to. I was constantly commenting on other people's work and trying to stay relevant in the social media landscape. I can safely say after a year of doing this, I have gotten 0 new clients from Instagram. On top of that, I've wasted a ton of time. When I'd open Instagram, I'd get distracted by the Reels page, and as we all know, that can just devolve into hours of pointless scrolling. So how did I build up a network of clients? Where did all of these clients come from? Well, it's not nearly as sexy as a nice Instagram feed, but cold emailing. Well-crafted, well-targeted cold emails are infinitely more effective than trying to become people's friends on Instagram and praying that they're going to give you some work. Over 90% of the clients I've worked for in the past year have come from cold emails. The reason why cold emails are way more effective than trying to DM people on Instagram, email is already designed for business interactions. If you find a producer at a production company and you send them a cold email, when they open their inbox in the morning, they're already looking through business-related emails. You don't have to pretend to be friends. You can just pitch your offer. You can say, hey, I'm a freelancer who can do the work that you guys do. Here's my portfolio. Now you have my email. There's none of this constantly commenting on stuff, trying to stay relevant. It's targeted and way more efficient. So rather than lying to yourself and telling yourself that scrolling through Instagram is actually helping your business, I would say use that time to instead research companies, scrape emails, find the right people to talk to, and learn the art of constructing a well-made cold email. Which leads me to the next lesson I learned. I started sending off all these cold emails to all these clients. I would research them, add a sentence at the top praising something that they recently did, something that I liked about it. I'd give a spiel about who I am, and then I'd link to my portfolio. I'd send off around 10 of these emails a week and wouldn't really hear back. And I didn't really know why at first. And then it dawned on me when I was scrolling through my emails one day. No one really wants to be scrolling through their emails. Everyone wants to just get through all their emails as fast as possible because they're busy and they have other things to do. And when I was sending people my portfolio, it was a link to my website that had all my work on it. It had long-form documentary work. It had short-form social media stuff. It had corporate videos. It was a mixed bag of work, and I didn't really stand out because I didn't look like I specialized in anything. That's when I realized I could make custom portfolios on my website that are tailored to specific people that I'm reaching out to. So if I was reaching out to someone who made commercials or made short-form social content, I would send them a version of my portfolio that only had stuff that I made for social media. It would have none of my longer-form documentary work. Now, when you send out the email and someone's checking out your work, they can immediately visualize the type of work you do and how that relates to the stuff that they're trying to get done. Saving someone even 5 minutes in reading your email is going to drastically increase the amount of successful responses you get to these cold emails. Stop wasting people's time. Create custom portfolios that target the specific type of work that they do, and the odds of them reaching out to you are way higher. Now, once I started actually landing gigs, that's when I learned this third lesson. When I was working at production companies, I was usually the director and sole editor of most of the projects projects. What this meant is that no one saw my actual project files. The only thing people cared about was the final deliverable. Was it good and was it delivered on time? Other than that, I worked independently and had my own way of organizing things, or in my case, a lack of organization, which was fine at the time. But what I realized when I went freelance is that I'm not the only one looking at these projects anymore. The most recent project I worked on, the director wanted to do live editing sessions. So we got together in person and we were building the edits from the ground up as a team. To keep the creativity flowing, I needed to be able to pull up clips from 4 days of shooting at pretty much a moment's notice so that we didn't break our flow of creativity. If I had taken 5 minutes to find a clip in the mess of my project every time we wanted to test out a new idea, it would not have only been inefficient, it would have made me look incredibly unprofessional. And here's what I ultimately learned. Good organization means speed and efficiency, which also leads to happy clients. When I finished this project with this director, she actually approached me and said she was very impressed with how fast I was at editing. And because of this, I'm going to be working on a project with her in the new year. Media organization isn't a sexy topic, but trust me, if you get this dialed, it can have a very tangible outcome on your earnings and your clients in the future. The fourth lesson that I learned is all about my ego as an editor. When I left my job at the production company, I had this vision. I was going to be this documentary editor. That is my goal, my dream in life, is to edit only documentaries. So any work that was paying the bills but wasn't documentary work, I was kind of like dragging my feet to try and get done. I thought that this type of work was beneath me. You know, I was this documentary editor that had films in film festivals and blah, 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 blah. It's all just your ego talking. When you look at it like this, when you get projects that aren't your dream projects, you stop trying, you stop applying yourself as an editor, and you're actually missing out on a lot of potential growth. This past year has taught me to swallow my pride, and it made me realize that with the right perspective, every project is documentary editing practice. 3-minute corporate videos that usually have an interview with the owner, you have character, you can mess around with pacing, you can figure out how to make intros engaging so that people keep watching. These are all skills that are applicable to editing documentaries as well. The other perks of editing corporate videos is that they tend to have tight turnaround times, which means you're learning how to stick to deadlines, how to communicate, and all those other professional skills. They generally pay more reliably and faster than documentary work, which means you can keep the lights on. And lastly, there's generally more of them. So you're spending more time editing, which ultimately means by the time you get that dream project, you're going to be that much better of an editor. So figure out ways to stay excited, to stay creative, and learn new things. Because when you take on this mindset, then no project ends up being wasted time. It's just another opportunity to learn and sharpen your skills. Speaking of dream gigs, last year around this time, I learned lesson number 5. I got approached by a local director to edit a web series that was going to be an episodic series of around 8 episodes. They wanted me to edit the pilot episode as well as a trailer that they were then going to use to pitch to get funding for this show. The budget for this project wasn't huge. I knew going into it that if I worked out the hourly rate of the amount of work it would have taken to make a 30-minute episode and a trailer, that I would be getting paid peanuts. But there was this promise of these future 8 episodes that I knew if I could nail this and get those episodes, that I would be set for pretty much the whole year. So I took the job. I've spent around 2.5 months editing the first episode and the trailer, and we sent it off. I didn't hear anything. A couple months went by, still nothing. And then finally, I decided to reach out to the director, and turns out that the funding fell through. I didn't get the dream gig of these 8 episodes, but that's just the reality of this documentary work. Not all documentary projects are going to work out. Some of them can flop. The biggest lesson that I learned from all of this is that working for cheap or even free is a sacrifice that's worthwhile if you're building relationships with the right people. That director that hired me for this project works at a local ad agency, and she approached me a month after this project and asked me if I wanted to edit a commercial for them. That commercial was the highest paying gig I had had up until this point. The agency now knew that I was a good editor in the area, and they actually hired me for 2 other commercials off the back of that first one. And then on top of that, one of the producers I was working with on that second commercial actually linked me up with another director in the area who hired me for another gig. And through that, I impressed her and got another gig out of that. So you can see how this snowballs, and you never really know what's going to come of this work. This whole game of freelancing is all about knowing the right people at the right time. And even though some gigs might not pay as well, you never know if that's going to be the gig that unlocks the door to a whole new room of people, a whole new room of opportunity. All right, there you have it. Those are the 5 lessons that I wish someone had told me before I made the leap into freelance editing this past year. It would have saved me a ton of time and a ton of headaches. But if you're a freelance editor yourself and you're looking to improve your workflow, check out this video here where I break down my documentary selects workflow, the same workflow that I used that impressed that director and got her to rehire me. Anyways, I'll see you guys in the next video. Later.